and this is a joint CPMC, National Association of Catholic Chaplain Town Hall meeting. And the topic is celebrating the holidays in this time of COVID-19 and ministering to detained and imprisoned people during the pandemic and during the holidays. So our two speakers today are Sister Susan Van Balen, who was for many years the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons chaplaincy. And we also have Doug Sandvig, who is with us from the Order of Malta. And so, Doug, would you like to begin? And then as we go on, you can certainly interact either by speaking or by sending us a chat if you have any questions.
Sure, happy to begin. And I invite all of you, if you have questions before you go unmuted, go ahead and submit those in the chat box. And my hope is that this will be as interactive as we can make it. What I'm going to visit with you about a little bit is the Pen Pal program that we have within the Order of Malta, and then also a holiday card or holiday greeting program. And as probably most of you have experienced, most of the prisons and jails are shut down to volunteer activities. And so it's really hard to effectively engage or even promote others to be engaged with those inside the walls. And it's one of the areas where the Pen Pal opportunity is really a unique tool in this particular time. And I encourage you to think about it. And we think about why we do this. Why would somebody be a Pen Pal? And I would say the company line on it is because Jesus told us to. He wants us to visit him in prison. He wants us to care for him. And to me, I find it really especially significant that this call to us is really just to visit him, that there's really a very high calling in the act of visiting somebody. And the nature of visiting goes far beyond just a physical face-to-face visit. And we can visit people through our letters. We can be present to them through our letters. And so it's this opportunity to have an encounter and an engagement for those inside the walls at this time when it's really difficult to do so. It seems at some level that having an encounter with somebody through an exchange of letters kind of lacks proximity, and it's not very intimate, and that it cheapens the encounter in some way. And I can tell you firsthand that for those inside the walls who get letters, nothing could be further from the truth. I'll tell you a little bit about a guy I know, and he was telling me how, and he'd been inside the walls for a little over 20 years. And I'm inside, this was back when we could visit, and I'm talking to him, and he tells me he got his last piece of mail 8 years ago. And he said he still has it. And he was describing for me the joy that he felt when he heard his name called off at some kind of a mail call. And he goes up and he gets his piece of mail, and he goes back to his cell and opens it up, and it's a piece of junk mail. But he still has kept that piece of junk mail for 8 years. It's hard to describe that something that is so available and casual and easy to us can be so powerful and meaningful to those who just don't have that kind of stuff. If you had a choice between being a Pen Pal or simply sending holiday greetings, I would certainly encourage you to go for a Pen Pal, because it gives the opportunity for some kind of a sustained, lasting encounter with somebody. You can get to a little bit of a rapport. You can find out about each other. So it gives a little bit more of a sense of actually accompanying somebody. There are a lot of people who are frightened and wary about having encounters with people inside the walls. And our Pen Pal program is anonymous. You don't ever reveal your full name. We go through a safe clearing system so they don't ever get your address. And yet people are still afraid of it. And maybe some people are afraid of making a commitment. If that's the case, the holiday greetings opportunity is certainly an alternative. And for that, I'll give you the contact information in a little bit, but it's just a matter of, you might get assigned 5 to 10 people and you'll send a holiday greeting to them, one for Christmas, Easter. If you've got the birth date available of the people you get, we'd encourage you to send them a birthday card. But it's not a sustained encounter. They won't have really any way to contact you. But you do have the satisfaction of knowing that you've reached out to somebody inside the walls, and it's likely that your contact with them has given them some assurance that they're not forgotten, that you respect their dignity, and those little snippets of affirmation are just so powerful to those people who are shut off from the outside world. One of the challenges we've had with our holiday greeting cards is many of the units will not accept commercial cards. So if you're in the practice of sending Christmas cards, you can't just send them a Christmas card. We get those returned in high volumes. And what we end up sending them is something that, to those of us on the outside, really looks boring and tame and tepid. And it's just kind of a sheet of white paper with maybe a blessing or a verse on the top of it. And it leaves many of us really unsatisfied in terms of the quality of what we're sending to them. And most of the units will let you send photos. And I'm a huge believer in sending photos. It brings a little color. It brings the outside world to them. Things that are really ripe subjects for your photos are things found in nature. My go-to photos are my kids' dogs. These guys love getting photos of dogs. And my sense is that the dogs, they've all had some connection with dogs. It's something they'll miss on the outside that they don't get on the inside. Dogs are about as non-judgmental as it gets. They all have personalities. I've had incredible success with just sending photos of my kids' dogs, and it's always a springboard for something more significant than the picture of the dog. Nature photos, really powerful. I had the opportunity in early September to spend a couple weeks in the Tetons and got some really good pictures, really through the courtesy of my daughter. She's an accomplished photographer. And we got up before sunlight one morning, went to a bunch of sites and caught really beautiful things just as the sun was coming up. So I sent about half a dozen of these pictures to the guys that I write to. And I want to share one of the responses to you. I thought the picture was really beautiful, but what really struck him was the occasion that I had to be with my daughter while taking the picture. And I just want to read from you a little portion of what he shared with me last month. Just said, what a blessing life must be to have such a relationship which you can share with your daughter. Heck, for any child to be able to spend quality time with their dad or mom has to be an awesome feeling. Sure as if a child, teen, or young adult is able to spend some quality time with their parents is cool. But when one-on-one time comes, how special. I never thought about how precious that could be until I got older and thought how I stole those moments from my own children. Maybe we need to fully experience it to value and to do all to pass it on. Doug, my heart yearns to love on my children, and the closer I grow to Christ Jesus, the more I feel I have to give. You know, I thought the pictures were what really resonate to him, but it was the occasion to be with my daughter to take the pictures that really just touched his heart. Like I say, I use the photos as a springboard for talking about something else. I mentioned the dogs. Let me share with you my some photos that I sent for my Thanksgiving reflection. And I don't know if this will show up well. It's a couple of greyhound snoots sticking through the door. And these are rescue greyhounds. The guys always love hearing about rescue animals. But you can just see the joy of those dogs as they're shoving their nose through the door. And I'm telling them my daughter-in-law gets this every day when she comes home from work. And it just led to a reflection about how dogs live in the present and that they're a model for us to really put aside our fears and our worries and just enjoy the present. And I think, you know, for a lot of these guys, the only real unconditional love they have experienced is through a dog. And so I just, if you've got the opportunity to send photos and you can't think of what to send, dogs are always fantastic. Just one more thing on how easy it is to overlook the significance of our encounters with these people. I'll share with you another letter I got in response to my Teton pictures. And this is a guy who I know from visiting him inside the unit. I'm a part of a Kairos team. You brothers who are part of Kairos have been a really big source of guidance and inspiration for me. You've shown me that it is not true that no one out there wants us to succeed or even get out. It was confirmation that all the people in life who told me I would never amount to anything or that I was dumb or worthless, everyone who said that it was impossible for us to succeed or that people would always try to keep us down and always keep our past over our heads were liars. Praise God, when he shows up, all lies and darkness has to flee. These two guys, who the letters that I sent you, I write to them pretty regularly. The first time I ever got a reply from them was when I sent these Teton pictures. And there was something in those photos that stirred both of them to write to me. So if you're looking for some way to really accompany these folks and to affirm them, send them some pictures. So that's all I'll say on that. The structure of our Pen Pal program, you can go to, I'll provide the written links to that. They'll give you more information and tools on how to get started. As you can imagine, prisons have a few rules you have to comply with. And so it's good to have those set forth in advance. Surprisingly, holiday greeting cards seem to be even more complicated than being a pen pal. But again, we've got the guidelines and materials to help you get started. And it's really a special way to affirm the dignity of those inside the walls. And if you're fortunate enough to hear back from them and have an ongoing sustained encounter with them, it is an extremely rich experience. And so with that, let me flip down to the chat box and see if there's some questions. Somebody has said their unit does not permit them to send in photos. Yeah, you absolutely have to find out what the rules are in your particular unit. The rules are definitely not uniform from state to state and probably not even from unit to unit based on level of security and things like that. But most of the units, I think, will allow pictures. If you can't send pictures, send a prayer. If they'll allow prayer cards, send a prayer card. Make sure they're not laminated. One of the tips I give to everybody is not just tell the person you're writing that you're praying for them, but ask them to pray for you and figure out some kind of a prayer request to put on them. We all know sick people. We all know people who are struggling. There is no higher recognition of their dignity than to ask them to pray for you. And believe me, you'll get somebody who has never had somebody ask them to pray for them before. And it is really empowering to them to have something that you can have them do for you. So with that, I'll go ahead and surrender my position here and go on mute unless anybody has any additional questions. And I will put in the information on where to contact for Pen Pal and where to contact if you want to send out some holiday greetings. Father George, do you want to take over from here, or Susan?
I'll take over, and I'm going to build, thank you, I'm going to build on much of what Doug said in terms of how do we maintain, or how do we help the inmates or those in halfway houses and so on across the spread of everything. How do we help them to connect with other people during the holidays? And I guess I want to start by saying that I think it's very important, if you're able to do something at a jail or prison anytime, that you not limit it to a Catholic population or a Christian population. And particularly this is true in prisons, where people change religions, shop around for religions. And so while they're in prison, they might be a different religion than they are when they're out in the community. However, there probably isn't a person in a US jail or prison. I'm not counting the detention centers for immigrants, but there isn't a person who didn't have Christmas, who didn't celebrate Christmas at home as a child. So I want to be sure that when you're thinking in terms of how to do something during COVID or during the holidays, that you are inclusive of as many inmates as you can. I worked inside prisons, and I don't know, maybe a show of hands, if there are people who were involved in prison. Could you just let me know who work in prisons regularly, even if you're not working now? Okay, probably my suggestions would seem less crazy to them, although I think they'll probably sound a little bit crazy, less crazy to them than it would to the rest of you, because I'm going to suggest some things. First of all, I talked a couple of weeks ago at, I don't know if it was a town hall. I think it was a different kind of a meeting. But one of the things I said is don't waste your capital. That there are times when you need to build on the relationships you've made in the prison. And holidays is one of them. And COVID-19 is one of them. I'll use an example, and that is that, as Doug mentioned, some prisons don't allow you to send in photographs. And the reason for that has something to do with the film and that it could be toxic and all of that. But National Geographic pictures can be sent in almost everywhere. Just a beautiful picture from National Geographic, and animals and as you mentioned, animals and plants and forests and all of that, because their world is kind of like my apartment, 4 white walls, only theirs are dreary. They don't have anything hanging on them. They're probably not allowed to hang anything on them, except in certain places. And so anything you can send them in those letters that would beautify their environment would be very meaningful. Also, I got muted somehow. I don't, how did, were you able to hear me? Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what I was saying. What did you last hear?
You were talking about beautifying and putting up pictures in their room.
Okay,
I mean,
so
and there's-
that's pretty much where I am. But the most important thing is free world food. Now, if you can convince the warden or the sheriff to allow you to bring in free world food, go for it. And when I mention free world food, I'm talking about the dollar menu at McDonald's or at Arby's. You know, for $1, you can get a sandwich from the free world. And if you can get permission, now there are some always caveats, which are then compounded by the virus. And that is that the free world food would have to be for everyone. That's always, you don't feed a certain group. So if you have 1,000 inmates, it means you have to have $1,000 to get those hamburgers from McDonald's. But you might be able to get $1,000 from your parish or from your diocese or from, excuse me, from your parish or from donors or whatever, so that you could provide them with something that they don't ever get. And free world food now would be one of the things. Ask again if the warden or the sheriff would permit you to send in, and they would have to order these, the inmates would have to order them. It would allow you to send in stamped cards that could be sent to their children for Christmas, or for that every person could get a card with a stamp on it, or that every person in the prison could get 3 stamps. That's what, 50 cents, $1.50 for 3 stamps. Now, there's a problem with stamps as well. And the problem with stamps is that you can attach something to the adhesive. You can attach a drug to the adhesive. And therefore, the inmates can get high or something. I don't know exactly what, but I know that it's a very big adjustment to have to be able to get cards in with stamps on them. And another thing that I have done, and it's too late for this year, but it's a good thing to keep in mind, perhaps for another holiday. And this would be more perhaps for the halfway house or for the reentry centers, or even for the detention centers, is to have an Undy Monday. And we always, in my area, had, in my institution, we had Undy Monday on the Monday after Thanksgiving. And every staff member was asked to bring packaged underwear. And and for roll call, we hung a clothesline, and they came in, and we had clothespins there. They came in and hung their undies, their packages of underwear on the clothesline. And then after the day was over, and we got underwear all day long. People came in, all the shifts, everything, hung their underwear, and those became gifts for the inmates. That was a halfway house, but those became gifts for them for the holidays. So I'm suggesting things a little more radical, I think, but that's why I said, hold on to that capital that you have. Nobody has more trust than the chaplain, and it's the chaplain's to lose, because if you betray it, you lose it. Okay, now, another nice thing is if you have, and this is kind of an extension just for Christmas, is to have children send cards, anonymous cards. And so that they receive something from a child with children's writing on the inside. Of course, there would be no return address. There has to be some return address, as Doug would tell you. They won't take anything with no return address. But a safe return address like the parish or something like that. But for all of these things, you have to get advanced permission yesterday. So when I say yesterday, I mean you have to hurry up and do it if you want to do it for this year. And then you have to organize your troops on the outside to come up with stamps and cards and so on, or hamburgers and hot dogs. But another thing would be to have a drive-by parade of lights. And that would be, and I think you could do it along the perimeter at some prisons, depending on whether or not you can see the perimeter. You could organize a group of people who would decorate their car with lights, and then you would drive past the prison and they would see all of those lights. And if there are windows, they would be able to see the lights and capture a little bit of the season. And sometimes it would be on a perimeter road. If you're in a jail, it could be right down the street that the jail's on, because there are lots of windows and people could see them. What's most important is that you go all the way around so that people on all the different sides could see them. I talked about Undy Monday. Oh, one more thing for Undy Monday. Most of the men in the halfway houses prefer boxers because they like to let them hang down a little, you know. And most of the women need larger sizes, 8, 9, maybe even some 10s. I can't tell you enough how important the pictures are, though. I want to go back to what Doug was saying. Those pictures just, I mean, even to send a picture of a wreath that you cut out of a magazine would be just a wonderful picture. And I love the idea of the animals too, the dogs and so on. My last thing that I want to say before we move on to some questions and so on, is that if you get permission to do any of the things I mentioned, get the permission in writing and signed off by the warden and the head of security. Because when you go to do that, if that person isn't on duty, they're going to turn you away like, but if you have that letter signed saying that you have permission to do this, you're more likely to get it done. Also, if you pull out your phone and say, well, I can call him. He said I could call him if you couldn't accommodate it. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but before I do, I want to say, Ed, it's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in years and years and years. Okay, are there questions or comments or other suggestions? I'm sure some of you have suggestions. And Misty, I hope you got a lot of ideas for, not just for Christmas, but for the COVID thing, which is it's going to be a long time before the prisoners get onto that list for vaccinations, I'm afraid.
Sister, I'm going to jump in just for a moment and mention something you said about sending things from children. And things from children really resonate powerfully with those inside the walls. And it has some way of reuniting them and taking them back to a time and place where they were with their families. One of the things that we have to facilitate this, because we're not allowed to have children write directly to inmates, is that we have assuming we have written parental consent, we have forms for those, the children can make what they want to send, an adult can review it, the adult will stuff the envelope and address the envelope, so that we sort of put a little safety link in there between the child and the adult, so that they're not going to move on to an inappropriate relationship or anything like that. Another thing, if you have a pen pal or even a greeting card undertaking, make it a family project. And it's really a powerful teaching event to go over it with kids or grandkids about who you're writing, why life is taking them there. Children have a real strong sense of justice and injustice and fairness. And it's a springboard for important conversations. And especially if you get letters from the inside, share those, with your children and grandchildren and get them to weigh in on it. Another thing, Christmas season, we'll have people ask sometimes about sending them books, or their pal will ask for something. We try to resist being providers for those on the inside. And our goal is really to have a more a spiritual friendship with them. But I will confess that if I can send religious materials or even good reading materials to people, I'll try to find a way to do it. If you send stuff even anonymously through Amazon, there are ways that they can trace who the sender was if they're energetic enough to do so. So you have to be fairly cautious about that if you really want to protect your identity. But it is usually, if you have something sent to a chaplain can deliver it. But while everything's been in lockdown, even the chaplains have limited access. And finally, another question we get all the time is, can we send them some stamps and stationery? And Susan talked on this a little bit. I don't know of any units that will let you send in stamps or stationery. It's, they'll require them to get things from their commissary. Even now during the lockdown, a lot of commissaries are either locked down or on really limited openings. So don't be discouraged if you don't hear from a pal or hear from someone you're writing. Just keep at it and just trust that your letters are getting through, and just be patient. But don't take your foot off the gas on it.
I would say, related to that there is in most prisons and jails, there's a little bit of humanity that sneaks in at Christmas time. It doesn't stay long, but you can sometimes capitalize on that and get something approved that you couldn't get approved any other day and or at any other in any other season. And that's why I suggested, for example, the cards and stamps, because if the stamp is already on the envelope sometimes, or if you say, we will buy the stamps from the post office and deliver them and you can give them out. The idea isn't for us to get the credit, but for them to have the opportunity to communicate. Okay, any questions or ideas or comments?
This is John Longener. I put this in the chat, but we normally have a Christmas meal for the men that are in our group, and we couldn't do it this year. So we ended up using something called Secure Pack, which is service prisons all across the country. And we basically raised some money and put together a food package for them that was delivered. And so, and then sent a message in, and I sent in pictures of Advent wreaths and the prayers to say for during Advent. And I think those are helpful. And Secure Pack actually does a food drop for most places 4 times a year. And you get an assortment of things that you can put together. But I put the link in the chat box if anybody wants to look at that. It's too late for Christmas this year, but it might be something, if this is still going on even towards Easter, might be something that people could do if you have a small group of people. And that way you can reach a small group of people, where what Susan was saying earlier is right now they're not letting us bring in, we usually bring in a hygiene package at Christmas time too, and they're not letting us bring it in because we're not doing it for everybody. So we're just holding it for later when we can get them in for just our group. But they also, through Secure Pack, you can also do hygiene as well. And that's another way to get it around, do it for everybody. So it's something to look at if you've never seen it. I just want to tell you one other thing that's happening in South Carolina that's like super exciting about all of this is the state has got a grant put together, and all the men and women in the state correctional facilities, there's 21 of them here, and they all have about 1,000 people max. They all are getting tablets, and then they have available now intranet. So it's locked down as far as what they can see, but they're going to let us put a mess up there every week for them now, which is turning out to be pretty cool. I'm trying to get links, trying to give them links to USCCB daily readings and to Bible. They already have Bible Gateway for Protestant Bibles, but none for Catholic Bibles. So we're lobbying that too. But I'm like super pumped about that.
John, do you know which outfit is providing the tablets? Is it Edovo or one of their competitors? Or
I can ask that. I don't know right now. I just know it was a grant, and they've been talking about it for the last 2 years. And the best I know right now, the 2 main institutions that I visit both have them, and they're both using them. And they said by the next 3 months, every single institution will have them. I can find out, and I'll post it sometime if you like.
we do some work with Catholic Distance University, and they have just put up 4 Advent reflections on their tablets so that they can get an Advent reflection with some questions and come back to it. They've also got a rosary course. First 2 weeks, the rosary course was up. They had 800 inmates complete it.
That's awesome.
And this notion of being able to stream masses would really be valuable, especially during the pandemic here. So if you can find out anything about that, I would love to tap into that and see how they made that happen.
Okay. I've just got my foot in the door this week, and hopefully it's all going to come together now. So I'll see what I can find out for you.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
Misty?
Yes.
Did you, I thought you,
No.
Well,
Thank you very much
I'm
for
one-
all of your ideas. It's very fruitful for me today. Thank you.
I'm wondering if Susan still coordinates her outfits with Pope Benedict.
Ed's talking about a time when we were in Rome together. And I am a Dominican sister. And so my superior said to me, be sure you wear a habit. And I did, of course, didn't have one. But she said, well, then wear a white suit. And so I wore a kind of an off-white suit. And I was honored to be the woman representative to meet the Pope personally. This was Pope Benedict. And when I went up to greet him, it was very obvious that the color of white was exactly the same. And the only way I could explain it when it was over was to say that I was the one with earrings and he was the one with red shoes, because we looked very, very much alike in that picture. So Ed was there also at that time. And it gives me a good laugh to think about it.
Yes, same here.
I wish it had been Francis.
Yes, yes.
Are there any other units that have any other programs or suggestions or ideas of things that can be done during this COVID season, holiday season?
I thought of one more thing that I forgot to mention. And now I can't find it, so. Free world food.
Susan, I'll tell you, I had an experience bringing free world food into a unit. And when we have one of our Kairos retreats in a prison unit, they bag up cookies and distribute bags of cookies throughout the entire unit. And the unit I visit has about 5,000 inmates. So distributing the cookies is really a big deal.
I can imagine.
I was really fortunate to be one of the people that got to go back into the cell block to deliver the cookies, which it was really quite an experience to go where they're living and just kind of seeing what their little bunk area looks like. And part of my job was to take the cookies into the people who are in administrative segregation or solitary confinement. To distribute my cookies, I had to put on like a flak jacket and protective covering, and they gave me a helmet with a face shield. And my heart was racing, but you went from cell to cell in there, and you just say, hey man, do you want some cookies? And it was just such a fantastic experience for them to have just not only a little bit of human interaction with somebody, but to get a dozen cookies. Again, it was just this affirmation of their humanity where somebody has done something really small and nice for me, but it really means a lot to me.
That's
And
right.
it's just such a rich reward to encounter those inside the walls. So, you know, bring some folks along when you can.
Yes. Kairos, the prisons are transformed by Kairos. I promise you that. Okay,
Have we lost Father George? Is he on? I don't know what.
He's gone off video, so he may be doing work.
Well, now he's part of this. I'm just afraid technology,
Okay.
Zoom.
I would say one more thing, and that is that if you work in a prison or go in on a regular basis, begin your planning now in January for for next holiday season, because it's a very long process, especially if you want to engage people in the community, like parishes and so on. So that would be, I guess, a closing thought from me.
I had a question for John Leininger in South Carolina. Is this having the tablets? This is pretty brand new.
They've been talking about it for almost 2 years. And then recently they were there, but they had to get wireless set up and in all of the dorms. So again, my institution that my primary one I go to has been up and running for about 2 months. The other one that I visit relatively often is just got it a month ago. And so, and I understand the women's prison that I go to once in a while has gotten theirs too. So it's in the process of all coming together. The technology and donations have just all come together to make it work.
John, this is Sister Dolores. By any chance, is that Dorchester County in South Carolina?
It would be one. Well, I don't go to that one. I'm sort of coordinating a lot of them, but I would believe that they have it. The head chaplain has told me that it's in 2/3 of the institutions right now.
Okay, because if it's Dorchester County, it is Adovo.
Okay.
Yeah, or should be, because they're one of the counties that comes up on my list.
Okay. And then that would be, I mean, whatever it is at one, it's going to be at all of them. So that's probably it.
Okay.
Do they have the capacity to call, through via email to families? Are they able to reach out?
At Clinton in South Carolina? Yes,
Yeah.
they can. Yes, they can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And they, as a general rule, they don't let volunteers connect through internet and phone with the men, but they have allowed that to happen with COVID since we can't get in.
Wow.
Yeah, and I should clarify that I'm pretty certain it's Dorchester. Well, it is Dorchester County. So hopefully it is Adovo, because they've got everything on there. They've got the Bible, both in English and Spanish, and a lot of the other information for Catholics that are incarcerated.
I was thinking that we need to contact the American Bible Association, and Mike Carrata is part of CPMC, and he can get free Bibles into prison. But it seems like if they can do that, that they should have the IT capacity to get it in into the different prisons also. So that was something we could follow up with him about. But he's always reaching out, and he's also has a trauma program that he's trying to promote, and also he would like to make available to anyone that is doing ministry or doing outreach to people that have been affected by incidences of harm.
Can you put that in the chat box? Can you just put what
I
that
will.
is in the chat box?
I will. Thank you.
Mhm.
Where's this chat box?
At the bottom of your screen, you see the word chat.
No, I don't.
Should be at the bottom of the screen, the main screen that you're working at. Could be, do you have it in right now? Are you in gallery view? What kind of view are you in?
I'm looking at it like a dozen people,
Yeah.
like
And
all squares.
where do you turn your microphone on or off, or your video on and off?
The top.
Okay, so do you see anywhere up there or on the side where it says chat?
Let me see, checking.
You
Oh,
also,
I
you
see,
also,
I
if you go
see
up
it
to
now.
view at the top, you should be able to see it. And then you literally, before they close the meeting, you can actually save everything in the chat box. You can literally send it to your desktop.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
Well, I'll give us a commercial just real quick, just to let you know that tomorrow we're going to have a webinar, and CPMC is, and it's going to be on formation. So it'll be Dr. David Lichter, Dr. Harry Dudley, and Dr. Mark Delmonico, who are going to be talking about the 3 levels of formation that we're going to be receiving certification from the USCCB next September, and the stages that they are in development for that. And then if you know of anyone that's doing juvenile detention ministry, on December the 10th, we're going to gather a group, and there are 2 people, Joe Cotton and Franchelle Lee. And Joe is in the Seattle Diocese, and Franchelle Lee is in the Galveston-Houston Diocese. And they're working on a formation program for volunteers that are doing detention ministry. And that is going to be on December the 10th. And so please go to our CP Catholic Prison Ministries .org. And on there, there's, you can scroll through, and it's got all the signups. You can just click and be signed up for either of those events. And we just appreciate you being part of this town hall. The idea is to be able to share resources, figure out who's doing what, and we're so grateful for your ministry. And it's such a pleasure to meet you and see you, and to get cross conversation, and definitely raise and get our best practices known within the church. And but we are diligently working, trying to get some levels of formation certification and just education, especially because we know that those that are doing the ministry do not have the time to do this formation. And we're trying to attract more people into this ministry. So it's, unfortunately in COVID, we're shut down, but this is the time and the opportunity for us to take advantage of this time to work on, sharing our different skills and aspects, but also for formation. So we are just very, very grateful for everybody that's on this call and for your ministry. So please feel free to reach out to Catholic Prison CPMC.manager@gmail.com for any individual communication, or and I'll put that in the chat also, and or give us a call. And I'm Karen Clifton, and I'll put my phone number in there too. So if there's any way that we can help you, we would, we're delighted and really appreciate you being part of this town hall. And thank you, Doug, so much for your the Pen Pal program and all the work that's being done there by the Knights of Malta and yourself especially. And Sister Susan, you're a wealth of knowledge. And we're just so grateful for you coming on board and sharing your expertise. So I'll leave it open as far as if anybody has any other questions for our 2 presenters today, or if you have anything that you would love to give to the group for the good of the whole, we'd appreciate it.
Karen, this is Bob Tebow from Milwaukee. I hadn't seen any kind of email on tomorrow's meeting. Was that sent out to the group that had been talking about it before, or?
There's a newsletter that went out. I think it went out Monday, and then there was another reminder today that went out. Did you not receive it?
No.
Okay. Can you give me your email address, and we'll make sure we get it to you?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
To make note of, for many of our newsletters, when we send this out at the beginning of the month, it may be worth checking your spam filter, or if you have a Gmail account, sometimes it'll end up in the promotions folder as well. So just double check on that. And if that's still not in there, like Karen said, give us your email and we'll make sure we hook you up with the right newsletters.
Jared, do you have Mike Carrada's email address? Because I am not pulling it
His
up.
email address is included in the on the chat. I put the webpage for the American Bible Association Catholic Outreach.
Oh, thank
And
you.
on that webpage, you can find Mike Carrada's contact info, and he's super good about getting back to people on their efforts to connect people with Catholic resources. So I encourage you to check that out. I see a question in the chat asking if the newsletter is on our Facebook page. No, we don't typically post it on our social medias. However, if you just log on to our homepage that is included in the chat feature up there, if you scroll to the bottom, there is a way to subscribe to our mailing list, and we can get you hooked up that way to make sure you're getting that email.
Well, I appreciate all of you very much. And if, as Jared said, it was a wonderful, strong voice that came on. If Jared has been managing our website and sending out all of our communications. So we will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It'll be a full webinar. And please go on CatholicPrisonMinistries.org and get the information and sign up. But we're grateful for you and look forward to seeing you at the upcoming ones. Thank you.